Episode 700. The 700th episode of this podcast.
Kind of horrifying.
Some people actually listen to all of them. Still talking about the college football playoff 700 episodes later. Still trying to figure this thing out.
That was probably in episode 1.
Yeah.
And still around in episode 700.
Yeah. So we'll see. Can't wait for 1400. We'll be arguing something. Anyway, format, they had a meeting. They met. Commissioners met in Dallas, and our intrepid reporter, Ross Dellenger, was there. Nothing was announced, of course. But you have details. What do we got? Now, just to set the table, they got to do something about agreeing on what 2025 will look like, namely the seating. It seems to be the big issue, which is understandable. And then they've got to decide what they want going forward in 2026 and beyond. So it's a 2-tier meeting, and nothing was decided on either tier. What do you got, Ross?
Right. Yeah, that's the big thing here. These are like two different things kind of running. The conversation's kind of running on parallel tracks. And if you talk to Brett Yormark of the Big 12 and ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips, they say that the two are kind of connected or linked. What you do in 2025 may impact what you do in 2026. So let me say, in 2025, to change anything, you need unanimity around the 11 members of the board, the 10 commissioners and Notre Dame's AD. In 2026 and beyond, as we've discussed plenty on the show, the Big Ten and SEC control the format. So they get to say what kind of goes according to a memorandum they all agreed to last spring. So they spent most of the time on 2025 yesterday in Dallas and trying to come up with in some kind of way to move to a straight seeding model. Right now, the seeding isn't identical to the CFP Selection Committee's ranking because the 4 top seeds are assigned to conference champions, and they get the first round buys. So there's a thought that they, in order for, in the SEC Big Ten are the ones obviously that want this seeding change, and they need unanimity. And so in order to get that, there's a financial model that they discussed yesterday, and it's basically the teams that would, if they do change the seeding, the teams that would have gotten the buys, the top 4, the conference champions, they get $4 million in additional revenue for advancing to the quarterfinals, for getting that buy. So can you continue to give them that $4 million despite them maybe not getting the buy in a straight seeding model? And so that's what they discussed. So basically the top 4 conference champions would get the money, would get the bonus money, the extra $4 million, even in a straight seeding model where you don't get the top 4 seeds in the first round bye.
So let me stop you there. This is how I got that. I read that in your story last night, and it's so basically you get, there's different numbers, but for lack of a better term, I think people know the NCAA basketball. You get a unit, you get an amount of money every time you win a game, and by being put into the bye, you lose the opportunity to win a first round game because you go directly into the quarterfinals. So they were rewarding those teams by saying you basically won a game that did not exist. So you get that first round unit, if you will, in broad sense. And what the ACC and Big 12 are saying is, or the Mountain West in this case, hey, we still want that $4 million. So this way you just say, all right, you're going to get an extra share, even if you don't get put into the quarterfinals. So somebody could actually get more money by winding up the 5 seed, winning, keep going, right? So that's kind of it.
Right. Yeah. And the more you advance, the higher it get. If you qualify for the playoff, it's $4 million. You advance to the quarters, it's another $4 million, and then it goes $6 million to the semi, $6 million to the championship game. So yeah, the idea is to take the $4 million that was given to the top 4 seeds and just give the $4 million to the conference top highest ranked conference champions. in a straight seeding model, even if they aren't the top 4 seeds. And in some cases, they could be the top 4 seeds, although that's a rarity, as we've seen in the past. I think it sounds like that's a possibility, and I think it was about a month ago, maybe right before the championship game. I think we discussed it on the pod. I had a story with comments from Jim Phillips and Brett Yormark about this, and Brett Yormark was pretty clear that he would potentially vote for this if it did come with more money, if you got to keep that $4 million. And now that actually was expressed in the room when they discussed it yesterday. And I think the CFP staff is going to do, you saw a lot of people tweeting and writing about the research and data that the commissioners tasked the CFP staff to do. And I think most of that has to do with this financial model. It's basically, hey, Big Ten, SEC, this is how much money, right, that you would be gaining in a straight seeding if you didn't change the financial model, versus this is how much you would have to give the other leagues in a straight seeding model. So they're trying to kind of figure that out. And I've crunched the numbers. It's not real hard to do on how many times, maybe, and then you look at the last 11 years of the CFP, how many times a Big 12, ACC, or a G6 champion would have been ranked in the top 4. And it's about one each year. The average is you're going to have one of those teams in the top 4. And you're going to have 3 from the Big Ten or SEC in the top 4. That's kind of the average. So you look at it by year, Dan, and it's really only one $4 million payment, right?
Right.
That they would have to distribute.
Also, out of 16 teams, we're talking $250,000.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Who gets the $4 million? Is the $4 million divided by the whole conference?
Yes.
Or is the $4 okay?
Usually, it depends, right? Because the ACC has their CFP initiative, success initiative deal,
Right.
but it goes to the conference. It does.
Yeah.
It goes to the conference, and then the conference is supposed to distribute it, right, as part of the big pot.
So,
but some leagues are different, like the ACC.
Right. So the deal here is for the Big 12, the ACC, and everyone else to go along with this for an extra $4 million. You're asking your best team to probably play around earlier and have theoretically have less chance of winning a championship in exchange for $250,000, which would be the price of, I don't know, like a all-conference offensive guard. I don't know. I just don't think it's like everything is about money, and you always want to look to scrape every damn nickel in this sport, but I just don't know whether it makes sense to give up the seeding advantage, at least for 1 year, for 2025.
Yeah, it's just
Unless
1 year. That's
are,
something to keep in mind. Yeah, that's a good point, Pat. This is just 1 year. The performance-based distribution model ends after this year, and a new contract begins in 2026, where not only, as we mentioned before, the SEC, Big Ten have control over the format, but it also, there's a huge shift in the revenue distribution model, how revenue from the CFP is distributed. And there's no performance bonus. There's no, you get X amount for advancing. It's just one amount to one base amount split among the conferences. And so, yeah, this would be like a one-off, basically. And yeah, when you boil it down to that, Pat, $250,000 per cut per school, it doesn't sound very worth it, does it?
Well, but you would get to there's a decent chance you get to host. Now,
yeah, maybe.
Okay, so you get to host
this year that wouldn't have been the case, right?
Yeah, it wouldn't have been the case this year.
None of them this year would have hosted. Boise would have with a 9 seed. Arizona State would have been the 11 seed. Yeah, and then Clemson
the 12.
Yeah,
I would say. So I think we should have straight seeding. I think it's better for the playoff. And I think that, I guess what really cracks me up is they'll spend time hashing over $250,000, but no one, like, did we bring up, can we get the quarterfinals on campus, which like fans really want? Like, oh no, we didn't get to that because we spent 7 hours analyzing whether every school in the conference gets $250,000 for 1 year. Like, let's get to the priorities here. I think they should have straight seeding. I didn't like the top 4 conference champs get it. So I'm fine with it. And if this is the little payout, I think if you're gonna be, you can be an advocate or you can be like a activist, right? And like if you're an advocate for a better playoff and you're like I am, and you say I don't like the SEC Big Ten plan for 4 automatic bids, but a better playoff is better seeded playoff. And so if that's what if that somehow helps, that's fine. But let's have a good playoff. And if it's this, I think they should take that deal. I don't think they will, but I think they should, because I think it would make for a better playoff.
Well, and there's another part of this, as I wrote in my story. It's not just the financial piece, right? Another part of this is what the Big Ten and SEC plan to do in 2026 and beyond. And I think that's part of the conversation is, well, if we're going to give you our vote for 2025 to change the straight seating, that would benefit you, Big Ten and SEC. What are you going to do for us in this multiple AQ model that you've been talking about starting in 2026 and beyond? And I think some of the compromises around that are, well, number one, just not having multiple automatic qualifiers, right? Number two, maybe having multiple automatic qualifiers in a 16-team bracket where you have more at large, 2 more at large, perhaps, or you have multiple automatic qualifiers, but not as many. Maybe instead of 4 each for the Big 12, Big Ten, and SEC, you have 3 each or something. So, and then, part of that is the group of 6, which Tim Pernetti, the American commissioner, told me from my story a week and a half ago and all this. I quoted him, and he said it again last night after the meeting, is, we should see our AQs expand as well. If you're going to expand your AQs, we should have maybe 2 AQs instead of 1 in the group of 6. So there's that as well. So there's a lot of compromise talk when you look at 2025 for 2026 too. I think it was Brett Yormark who said you can't bifurcate the two and look at them separately. They are linked together. If you want our vote for 25, what are you going to do for us for 26 and beyond?
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty clear message from him and Phillips there. And, that they're going to push back as much as they can against the 4 automatic qualifier proposal. And this is one way to do it. If you don't have a lot of cards in your hand, you're playing 2 different sets of cards, and you've got cards for 2025, but you don't have cards for the rest. Do you try to parlay your 2025 advantage into something that lasts beyond that? And I think that's what they're pushing for there, as Ross illuminated. And again, like if you're the Big Ten and the SEC, I guess I'd be interested in hearing how much do you want to play ball with that? The sense is that they don't want to play nice at all, but is it really that important to change the seating for 2025 and give back, say, 1 automatic qualifier and go with 3 automatic qualifiers instead of 4 going forward? I don't know. I mean, I don't like any of the automatic qualifier stuff, but I'm trying to think like a power-hungry commissioner here.
Well, that's the question. I like everybody asking for AQs. It's like Oprah, right? You get an AQ, you get an AQ.
You get an AQ, and you get an AQ.
We have 18 automatic qualifiers for a 14-team playoff. Like what? What about the independents? What about UConn? Who's thinking of UConn? That's what I want to know.
As usual, nobody.
I will stand up.
Cares.
Well, it's funny because after the meeting yesterday, one of them kind of off to the side mentioned to me that Notre Dame's situation is an interesting one in all of this because obviously they don't get an AQ, but they do have the protection where if the playoff is 14 or 12, 16, however much it is, if they finish ranked inside that number, then they do get a protection to get that at large. But I still I sense that in another part of this, and I wrote about it, is Notre Dame under the current format, is ineligible from a first round bye. And I think it's pretty clear that if they change the straight seeding, whether that happens in 25 or when the Big Ten and SEC take over in 26, because it's going to change then, Notre Dame will then be eligible for a first-round bye. I think they will be eligible for a first-round bye, and Pete Bavacqua, the AD there, has made that pretty clear that he thinks that that should change, and I would imagine it will change.
I say I disagree with that because they don't have a conference championship game, but I don't know what this thing is a freaking puzzle, man. I mean, I don't think Notre Dame should only play 12 games, skip the conference championship game, and then get to skip the first round. I don't care if you're 12-0. Like you have to play one less game. Now that's the conference champ. I guess that's the conference decision to hold this conference champ. Now get rid of conference championship games. Now maybe we're talking. Also, I'm not sure Notre Dame would want that. You want to sit there from Thanksgiving weekend. You know, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they close with USC. Sometimes they close with somebody else, and then not play again until January 1.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, that's a good.
I don't think that's a great deal for Notre Dame. I also think getting a home game has got so much value. You know, to everything, including what Notre Dame is trying to be as a university. And I think just take that Friday, they got to host the first one. So there was a lot of like excitement over the first playoff game on campus.
Yeah.
And I mean, game day was there for like 5 hours. The McAfee show's there. People are there. Rashi went to the game, like all the reporters, you know, taking pictures of campus. It snows. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful, right? You know, if you're Notre Dame is obviously has, it's extremely hard to get into because they have many, many more people applying than they have spots. But still, anytime you're a private institution, you have to market yourself because you can't just count on we're the university of this state and X number of kids from this state are just going to come here. Not that anyone's really got it easy, but that to me, what was that worth to Notre Dame as an institution? I thought it was incredible.
More than it's funny. I was,
we're talking $250,000 and stuff in some of these discussions. It was worth more than that. Okay, right. It was worth more than that.
Probably, I can't remember. I think I actually wrote it in my story from there, but it multiple millions of dollars in economic impact to that area, South Bend. But I was sitting in the AD Bavacqua's office probably 6 hours before kickoff of that game. And he was looking out the window, you know, and there's snow flurries coming down and people streaming by. And he's like, do we really want to give up a home game? You know, and I think there's something definitely to that. And maybe it doesn't change, you know, maybe if they change the seating, maybe Notre Dame still is ineligible. I don't know how that would work. I'm guessing they would need unanimity to change that, as well. I think though, Dan, as far as like the 13th kind of data point, the 13th game, you would think that would be like considered by the committee when they're doing the seeding. You would think that would be.
We want to take the subjectivity out of this, Ross. I thought the subjectivity was this horrible, horrible thing. This is the funny part about that. Yeah. They're the straw man of the committee. Because they go, well, we don't want a committee picking a 12-team field, a 14-team field, right? First off, 11 of them are obvious. 5 of them are taken. And no one was saying, boy, does Texas deserve in? I don't know. Let's have a debate. They're in. Penn State, Tennessee, like these teams were all Ohio State. They were all good enough. Like there wasn't a debate. You look and go, hey, you did well enough, you're in. That debate on the room should have taken, I know they don't because they have these processes, but they should take like 2 minutes. And then you get down to the very end and someone's got to make a call between the last 2 teams or maybe the last 3 teams. That's pretty much it. Do you take it? Okay, what do you think? Indiana, Alabama. What about SMU? I said get rid of the weekly rankings so you have a more organic, full-bodied discussion point. It's improve that process. I've discussed this. Every person I've discussed this with agrees. Yet was that discussed? We're hashing out 250 G's. But it was like that discussed? Like, hey, let's improve the process of how we evaluate the teams. That would make it better subjection.
It was discussed. In fact, There
I
was some
made it.
discussion of can we add
Just a
in,
bill on Capitol Hill, man.
Can we add in? Well, you're not going to probably like what I'm about to say,
Well,
because one of the things around the discussion was, can we add in more computer rankings as part of the selection? Of course, we've already seen.
what about the weekly
computer
rankings?
Dan, I think you wrote a book about it.
Yes. What about the weekly rankings?
Oh, the weekly. I'm sorry, the weekly rankings. No,
That was not
that's
discussed.
kind of built in. And I think I quoted Sankey as in back in December in a story that is built into the ESPN agreement, and I don't think ESPN's budging.
I mean,
it's
them.
hilarious to me. Like the two things that are just like non-starters to it seems like with these folks are, one, the weekly show, which does not help them, and two, the bowls in the quarterfinals, semifinals, and they're just not going to touch that, even though both of those seem rife with areas that could be improved.
Yes.
They just don't want to improve those.
Well, I think they would say it's built into the contracts. There's an agreement and maybe in 31, right? We'll see some of that change. But the bowls are contracted. They signed an MOU last spring to be part of the playoff. Now, it's just an MOU, right? The long forms are not done yet. They haven't been executed. But they will, once the ESPN long form is executed, probably by April, the bowls will kind of fall in line. But I think those are two things that you'll probably see in whatever new playoff we have starting after 2031. You would think that they would reevaluate those two things. One of the things they did discuss was
2031
was the bowls in the meeting yesterday. I don't think I wrote anything about this because it's not super impactful, but the quarterfinal bowls used to be you get there 5 or 6 days ahead of time, right? The team would, and you do all these events around the game. You'd go to whatever hospital, whatever,
they eat like
Disney
steak,
World
the steak eating contest in LA, right?
Yeah,
the Rose Bowl,
all these things that the bowls,
all
these things, the bowls, all these events the bowls have around the community for 5 days leading up to the game. And obviously that is all changed, right? That is all changed. In this year specifically, it changed from teams getting in 3 days before the game, basically still doing some of the things, but it being limited. Well, I think there was a pretty long discussion in the room yesterday of even further limiting the team schedule. I think there was a lot, especially from Big Ten coaches, a lot of pushback on some of the events. First of all, getting there 3 days ahead, I think a lot of coaches would want to get there a day or at most 2 ahead, and I think we're going to see that. So I think we're going to continually see the bowls that serve as the quarterfinals and the semifinals become less of bowl events and more of an NFL traditional type of regular kind of playoff game. I think that was discussed at length in the room as well because of the pushback from some coaches on the schedule.
I mean, a contract is nothing but a starting point of a negotiation. There are concessions you could make. I don't blame ESPN for wanting their weekly show. It works perfect for them, right? Gives them a little ratings pop. It's good for us. Gives us stuff to talk about. Like this.
Yeah.
It's great for us.
Not good for the system though.
But I'm about the greater good, guys. I'm about the greater good. I'm not selfish. That's how you
Jim
make
Phillips
it.
too. Did you see his quote, Dan?
I did. It was great. It was a great quote. And I think I'm going to get to that quote because I think I see what they're trying to do. But, you don't make it 700 episodes unless you think of the people. The people. A lot of selfish pods stopped at 698 because they just couldn't make it that far. The bowls are these quote unquote not for profits who take enormous salaries and often donate very little to actual charities, at least historically. You can make concessions. Listen, you're not getting to host our quarterfinals, but here's what we'll do. We'll stage some preseason games at your building. We'll let you, there's ways to do this. The people that run Chick-fil-A don't just run the Chick-fil-A Bowl. They run a preseason game too. Like there's ways to do this stuff where you can make concessions that'll make them whole and create. All I want is a better playoff. I don't, and this is the problem, is there's nobody running the sport that looks at the overall thing. Straight seeding, I don't care who wins or loses on this, right? Quarterfinals on that's bet. Oregon got screwed last year, man. Oregon where they were the only undefeated team. They beat Ohio State heads up. They and their fans deserve to host that playoff game in their building. And instead, they get to go play Ohio State on a neutral site. Ohio State lost nothing by losing those games during the season. At the end of the day, they got to have a neutral site game against. Quarterfinals should be on campus. There shouldn't be a weekly show. Like, why can't we just do what some of the more obvious things to do? And instead, it's like, oh, hands are tied. Your hands are never tied. They killed the Pac-12, but they won't kill a contract involving,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there were some exit fees paid in accordance to do that. They could find their way out and into some better situations here.
They will slit the throat of anybody except, what's so sacred about this? There's ways to make concessions. Like, this isn't off the table. Can you guys just put together the best plan possible? Like that's what the NFL does. You want, they just sit there and go, okay, it's pretty good. They have a couple things that people get a little fired up about. Division champs get a home game. Remember, Minnesota went, I think, 14-3 and had to go to play the Rams, which got moved. All this. There's some things, there's some quirks, but for the most part, that's how they do it. There's somebody in charge going, this is what makes sense. And then you guys sort out all these little details. So you're arguing and fighting, and we got to make a compromise. We'll give you a better seed, but you give us $250K, but then you got to give me, this stuff isn't producing the best possible tournament. And that's the part that frustrates me, and I think would frustrate most fans. Is I get they found a way to, again, one of the biggest tricks they've ever come up with in this sport is getting fans to root for revenue. But you get fans rooting for perceived advantages. Let's just line them up and play. There's plenty of money for everybody.
Yeah, I think, Dan, and this was discussed a little bit in the joint meeting in New Orleans with the SEC and Big Ten ADs was hosting. How did it go? Hosting a first round game. There were plenty in that room that did host a first round game.
How'd it go?
I think there's two kind of opinions that come out here, and it's one, wow, it's so exciting, incredible to host a first round game. It's really cool.
So who hosted?
Campus
Texas?
Awesome.
Texas was the only one.
Texas first round game. Texas, Penn State, Ohio State.
Oh yeah, okay. They had the Big Ten ones too. Yeah, okay. I thought.
Yeah. And
a lot of work.
So a lot. So that's the second.
Give their operations guy the $250.
Whoa.
Give the SID a $250.
That everybody was exhausted, right? By the end of this thing, I think.
I'm sure.
So doing it for a second week is trying on, I think, the staff and all that, and in general the community, even though it brings in a lot of money. So, and then the other part of this is it is the weather. If you obviously when you add more games, you have a chance of getting a blizzard or something up north and all that stuff. Even though it's cool, and I get it, I think the weather is part of football and all that, and should be shouldn't be a negative. But I think people see it as a negative, especially at college stadiums that aren't all prepared as maybe an NFL stadium. So a couple of things, those were voiced. I will go back to something you mentioned, which is getting a first round bye. I thought this was really interesting. In the meeting last week in New Orleans, it was clear because Rob Mullins, the Oregon athletic director, was there, which his team obviously got a bye. And Kirby Smart was actually in the room on Monday with SEC ADs. So Kirby Smart and Rob Mullins seemed to make it quite clear to the rooms that they were in last week in New Orleans that we didn't like having a bye. It was made pretty clear. We didn't like sitting out, what was it, 2.5 weeks or something, 3 weeks? That was made clear. And so I think part of a 14-team model or 16-team is you shrink the amount of buys for a program. Maybe we end up at a 16-team where you have no buys at all.
The buys not make sense because the teams that are not in the conference championship game get a bye. That's just their bye.
Mm-hmm.
So you're playing the same number of snaps, it doesn't, it's just the timing of the week off, if you want to call it. So, all right, let's go to break. We'll be right back after this. We got some gambling scandal too. Pretty exciting. All right, I just want to get to this one part that I thought was good. It was in your story, Ross, and it was the comments by Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner. And I think this is what he's going with. And I think this is their bet. He and Yormark's best bet is to kind of appeal to people like me, who I get that this is like, it's easy when you're in these rooms to be a commissioner or an AD and it's like corporate rating. It's business, right? You try to defeat your competition in the business room and take market share. You try to put your competition out, right? If you're McDonald's, you want Burger King to go away, all that stuff. I get it. But this isn't all business. There's a public trust of sorts. A museum in Chicago doesn't try to put the museum in Milwaukee out of business. Like it's you can both have good museums. You want the museum to be everywhere. Things like that. For all of us, this is Jim Phillips. For all of us, there's been somebody before us and there will be somebody after us. You have to serve your constituents, but you can't be completely oblivious and not mindful of what's good for college football and the fans and what you're hearing from them. I think this is a winning argument for them, or at least as winning as they're going to get, is to try to rally public sentiment. Seen, everything from Paul Feinbaum on down, kind of grasping on that. Like, well, why can't we just have a good playoff instead of it's like, how can we wring everyone's neck? And I think that the destruction of the Pac-12 is a perfect example of that. Like, what did we actually gain out of this? No one's really sure.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that should be the purpose of the people that are in charge here, and it should be the stated purpose to rally public support. Is we need to actually try to make college football as good as it can be, as opposed to we need to make the most money possible for our little fiefdom at the expense of the other little fiefdoms. So, to me, I'm glad Jim Phillips articulated it. I'm glad he said it, and I hope that's what they mean, and that's what they're doing behind closed doors. And I want them to get out of the closed doors and say the same thing. I will say, I clearly disagree with Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti on this, but at least Sankey, for the most part, is out there, available, willing to discuss the issues. Where's Tony Petitti? Almost never hear from him. He sits there next to Sankey at those Big Ten SEC meetings, talks a little bit then. But the guys that are behind this 4AQ plan, where are you? Let's Tony Petitti in particular. Let's hear from you about why this is good for college football as opposed to what's good for the Big Ten. You're in charge of a massively important, publicly facing endeavor here. This is not the boardroom at CBS or some other private company. Big Ten Conference serves a lot of people, and college football serves a lot of people. Talk to us about why 4AQs for the Big Ten is good for college football.
Yeah. And I think it may not be fair to Tony Petitti, but we saw his predecessor arrive from the NFL, cause all sorts of havoc in the sport, lasting havoc, oversee everything from the 2020 season getting temporarily canceled to the destruction of the Pac-12, the rating of the Pac-12, or the expansion, whatever phrase you want to use, and then jump back to the NFL. And you go, was Kevin Warren really in it for the long-term good of college football, or was he about padding his resume to get another job back at someplace in professional sports? And then the rest of us are left with his decisions or his leadership. And I understand it is not all Kevin Warren on that. But we saw the Big Ten hire someone from outside of college sports and go. I was at odds for many, many years with Jim Delaney, but at least you knew the guy was all college sports. I saw his vision differently, but whatever. I didn't see the Division III movement happen, but at least he was like about college sports. And so Tony Petitti arrives from professional sports, Major League Baseball, some other things, and perhaps he is the most pro long-term college sports guy there is. Perhaps he is, but you can understand why some people are skittish saying, wait a minute, the Big Ten's got another guy who Greg Sankey's been there from the jump. And so if he's making decisions, he's coming from, the grassroots of experience of decades and decades, where we don't know that about Tony Petitti. So I think that's one of the concerns, is like, what is this guy doing? Because the worst thing an organization can have is people coming in who aren't trying to really build the organization. They're just trying to pad their resume to get the next job. And you see that in universities, where the presidents skip out after, the university presidents are always climbing the ladder. And so it's like they're there 2 years and then they're off. Like, what did you actually accomplish? You had to put your name on something. See it in struggling businesses. Like, the best businesses have one leader that's guiding all of the principles for decades, and they grow and grow and grow. So I think that's a reasonable concern. I don't know whether that's fair. It's not necessarily fair to Tony Petitti, but I think it's a reasonable concern.
Yeah, I think kind of hovering over all of this, right, is the fact that in Georgia just announced something in their local newspaper, the Athens Banner Herald, this morning about the rev share, but hanging over all of it is the revenue share, right? It is the thought that all these schools have right now $20 million, and within probably 5 years, $30 million hole in their budget to pay. And everybody is just chasing the dollar. That's what it is right now. And that's what it's going to probably continue to be, unfortunately. And, it's like that because college athletic leaders in the past, and many of them acknowledge this, they just didn't evolve quick enough. They didn't have the foresight to see what was coming. They didn't allow players to, run their own camp and make money off of it, or sell a T-shirt with their name on it and make money. And so now they're being forced into these things in a very quick amount of time by the courts and state lawmakers because they took too long to do it. And so now they're in a position where everybody is scrambling to try to make as much money as they can to fill that hole. And it's impacting everything. It's impacting the college football playoff. It's impacting the NCAA tournament, men's basketball tournament. We're going to see that. It's impacting NCAA governance as a whole in the decision-making that we're going to see. What else? It's impacting Olympic sports, right? It's just like this huge, massive trickle-down effect. And they just, and again, a lot of them acknowledge it. I've said it on the show before about Kevin White, the longtime AD at several places, Duke, Notre Dame, saying that we screwed up. We needed to see this and we needed to change quick enough. And now they're forced into change, and it's impacting everything, probably in a lot of ways negatively.
It's not impacting the going rate for a defensive coordinator. $3 million.
No, that's going up. Yeah.
Or AD salaries. No, I agree.
Yeah.
They invited lawsuits and lost the public support, and they lost the ability to really argue in front of a judge because they were so staunch. And they went the route of, we got to, the slightest drip of a leak in the dam, we got to patch up. We got to fight. And maybe that was the way. I don't know. When you had to go in front of a judge and make some of these arguments, they couldn't do it with a straight face practically. Go back and read some of the arguments in O'Bannon, where they're literally saying, yeah, we have a game of the Ed O'Bannon lawsuit, the UCLA basketball player. We have a video game of classic NCAA basketball teams, including UCLA. And the kid right here has got the same haircut. He's lefty and he wears Ed O'Bannon's number, but he's not Ed O'Bannon. Like, like Ed O'Bannon's like, he's a car dealer in Vegas going, can I get a cut? What the hell, right? No, you cannot. Right? When you're arguing that, when they went in front of the Supreme Court and said that if a player appears in any type of advertisement, it will adversely affect fans' relationship with college sports, and 10 to 20% will immediately stop watching. They are arguing that Caitlin Clark being in a State Farm commercial is somehow detrimental to college. Like, these arguments were so bad that they invited more lawsuits, and they got absolutely curb stomped, particularly by Brett Kavanaugh at the Supreme Court. And they lose 9-0. And they got Kavanaugh, who's going to be there for the next 30 years, going, I dare you to come back. Like, they needed to find a compromise. Instead, they fought on that blade of grass, and no reasonable person would be like, yes, Caitlin Clark was a disaster for college sports. It was terrible. Oh my gosh. I was personally offended when she was with Jake from State Farm. And so 20 million of us watched the championship game. It's like, but that's what they fought, and they needed to. And now here we are. But I see more money pouring in every day. And then Georgia's struggling to find the 20 million. I don't know. I guess.
Well, I mean, no SEC Big Ten program, they're certainly in a better position, right, than everybody else, because they've got new money coming in, more new money coming in than others through their TV deal that's escalating, and through the CFP, the new CFP revenue distribution model, where the SEC and Big Ten get 59% of the pie, combined 59% of the pie. So if you do the math, Dan, each SEC school's CFP distribution will increase by around $15 million starting in 26, I believe. So, well, there you go, right there, right? That's 3/4 of your revenue share, and then then in addition to that, they'll get in incremental increase of probably $3, $5, $7 million annually in their TV deal. So they're not in as bad a position as some others in the Big 12 and ACC, which is why a lot of, I think, Big 12 and ACC programs are at least toying with the private equity, private capital side to try to get an infusion of money. I was on with a group of boosters at a school, explaining to them the revenue share concept in the House case. And I could just see from the looks on their faces in the room that they did not agree with this, right? They did not agree on paying players. And I was trying to get through to them, like, the courts and judges have said this. The Supreme Court, conservative-leaning Supreme Court, that never agrees on anything, agreed that college athletes should get more compensation, even though that's a separate case, Alston versus the House stuff. In a lot of ways, it aligns with all these rulings. And there's just been there's a lot of people on these college campuses, whether they're boosters or board members or just big fans, who just, think that tuition, right, and fees were enough. And for the vast majority of athletes, they probably are right, as far as when you look at the revenue that sports bring in. But for major college football programs, especially in the power conferences, judges have decided it's not enough, right? And I was had an athletic administrator, a longtime athletic administrator, having a conversation with a fan recently, a big booster. And the booster's just like, this isn't right. What are we turning into? And the athletic administrator said, well, we're not a plantation anymore. Thought that was a great quote. So they know what's happened over the years. In the power conference football, and to a degree in men's basketball, tuition and fees are just not enough, and books and all that are just not enough. And the issue is, right, how do you distribute all this other stuff, all this other revenue to all the other sports? What happens to all the other sports in addition to those? And I mentioned earlier, and I wanted to follow up on it, Dan, Georgia announced locally its revenue distribution formula, what it was going to use. And it's no real big surprise. They're going to do 75% to football. So that's $13.5 million. 15% of the revenue to men's basketball, it's $2.7 million. 5% to women's basketball, that's $900,000. This is annual amounts, obviously. And then 5% to all other sports. And that aligns to what most other programs plan in the power conferences plan to do. That's what the expectation is. A lot of programs plan to give 80+% to football, actually plan to give more to football. But a place like Georgia with a brand like Georgia, I think you'll have quite a bit of above the cap money in the quote real NIL deals. So just a little info there coming out as we're on the pod.
Yeah. All right. We will be back. We've got some crime and punishment stories. One serious one, maybe less so. All right, Pat. Great story by Pat Forde, Michael Rosenberg over at SportsIllustratedSI.com. Inside the gambling ring, allegedly linked to point shaving across pro and college basketball. Some solid work. I know you guys have been on this a lot. There is these stories have been popping up and people haven't really been paying attention because they generally are featuring low major and mid major basketball, some really obscure bets like first half totals and things like that. I think when people look at point shaving scandals, they're expecting like someone to throw the national championship game or something like that. But that isn't quite how this is working. At least you are finding, Pat, incredible details in this story. I highly recommend people going over to SI.com and reading it. You will shake your head. You will laugh. You will maybe be outraged. Maybe you'll just be entertained. Pat, tell us about this ring and what you guys have found and this quite colorful gambler in the middle of it.
Yeah. Difficult to condense to a few minutes here, but what we've got is the people that were involved with the Jontay Porter point fixing, prop game fixing that got Jontay Porter banned for life from the NBA are being investigated for being involved with Terry Rozier, possibly betting on prop bets with him at the NBA level, maybe other NBA players. But also they're investigating ties potentially to the college game. And the college game is where it gets really a bit insidious because they're mostly doing what I guess if you want to make suspicious wagers in college, do it where people aren't paying attention. So do it with obscure teams with losing records who aren't very good and who even notices whether or not they're shaving points or potentially, allegedly shaving points. But we've got a guy named Shane Hennon who these are the people that may potentially be involved with your college program in some form or fashion. Shane
I love
Hennon.
this guy.
Oh, he's something. Felony facsimile bomb charge. You ended up with that I think was pleaded down. Aggravated assault, cocaine distribution in the parking lot of a Wendy's near a casino.
Gotta get your nuggets, man.
Yeah. Supervised release from that. Left the state. Got busted for a DUI. He is also an accused card cheat by several people in the poker realms, that he was fixing poker games. So he's one guy involved in this. The college programs that we're aware of, Temple, we've talked a bit about that. Eastern Michigan, which got a notice of inquiry last month from the NCAA looking into games there. North Carolina A&T, Mississippi Valley State, and there are quite likely several other programs as well. And so the MO here, you look at Eastern Michigan as a bad basketball program with no money. Nobody pays attention to Eastern Michigan basketball. If you want to try to manipulate a game, that's probably a place to do it. North Carolina A&T, same thing. Mississippi Valley State, probably the worst program in America. Something came out from Jeff Goodman today. The top 4 of the top 5 scorers at New Orleans haven't played since sometime in January. And so that's one of the things here, Dan, is nobody really is talking about where this is going, who all's involved. Understandably, the feds are investigating. The NCAA doesn't operate that way. But if you look around, there are quite a few places where players just stop playing.
Yeah.
Or missed several games or never started the season. And the NCAA does not publicly release eligibility decisions. So this thing is probably pretty widespread. And if you're watching to find out how games are getting manipulated, that's a place to start. Some of the bets that Shane Hennon has made that he's publicly put on his website, sugarshanewins.com.
Yeah.
Fairly amazing. You're going to bet a first half spread on a Big South quarterfinal game. He obscured them. Yeah, between Longwood and Campbell. Won the bet, although he didn't say how much he bet. I mean, there's some of these other like major big bets on MAC games, first half totals of other games. Just a lot of obscure games that you wonder, why would somebody bet anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000 on that game unless maybe they know something?
Kind of fault the casino for taking that bet. I'm sorry, but someone bets $100,000 on Campbell Longwood first half.
Campbell.
This
That was
guy's Instagram. Sugar.
Baseball.
Yeah, that was that baseball, but that was bad enough.
The coach texted me, showed the phone to the cashier.
Yeah, he showed him, and he was in Cincinnati betting an SEC baseball game. This guy's Instagram, Sugar Shane Wins. He should be incarcerated for that yellow outfit he's wearing on a boat. One of those. This guy is everything you would expect. Sugar Shane Wins. Open invite to come on the pod. Open invite. We'll have you on. We don't have many, but we'll have you on. This guy, what a character.
I'll run it by his lawyer.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you got to look now in the fine print of these box scores. It says like DNP FBI, right? Like, why'd this guy not play? Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Don't gamble on sports. It's probably not a good idea. But don't gamble on the first half of Big South quarterfinal matchups because the game might be fixed. You're better off just betting on the Final Four. They're going to try. Okay, Duke and Houston matchup, they're going to try. Who's betting these things anyway?
I don't know. I mean, that's like, he bet $300,000 on an ACC championship game between Duke and Virginia, and I thought, well, okay, that's a high-profile game. But I asked somebody who's involved, they said that our casino would not take a $300,000 college basketball bet.
Sugar Shane wins for now. Now.
We'll see. He says he wins. Who knows?
He says he wins. All right. Well, I want to spin this to really one of the best offseason topics I've ever seen. This comes from the message board SEC Rant, kind of a famous message board, and our friends at Message Board Geniuses, who run a Twitter account where they comb message boards for the often most hysterical topics or comments, usually firing the coach after like someone takes a 7-0 lead in a game. You know, if like the Citadel takes a 7-0 lead on some SEC team, then it's fire the coaches. But from SEC Rant, this is from Buford T. He seems to be an Auburn fan. Off-season topic: which SEC teams have the most incarcerated fans at the moment?
That's a great one.
Which SEC team has the most incarcerated? Yeah. I'm going to conclude. I went to to an expert on this and texted Nevin Shapiro this morning. Oh
my God.
Who spent some time in multiple federal facilities, including 2 in the South, one in Oakdale, Louisiana, and one in Montgomery.
He's
Alabama.
Back. He's out.
Oh, he's out,
right?
Yeah. Oh, he's out. He's out. He got clemency. He said, or something. I know he got out a while ago. He's down in Miami. He's down in South Florida. You can find him on social media. He does videos and things like that. And Evan's, he's he's paid his debt to society and he's getting his life together here. And he said it took him 1 second. I will give his verdict at the end of this because I think we could all agree that would be the verdict. Like, I mean, none of us have spent a lot of time in the clink, counting SEC fans. But thoughts on this? There were a number of beliefs on this post on who had it. Tennessee, they're already wearing orange. Could be something there. Alabama obviously is a big one. Probably not Vanderbilt. More like fraud or like embezzlement.
The least that would probably have the least.
Right?
Embezzlement.
White collar guys. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to go get them, right? They're not getting the hand to hand down the corner. They're probably not big with the low level street crimes, but when they commit crimes, serious
Look
business.
out.
So, any thoughts? Who you voting for here? Or run through the contenders.
Roll Tide. I mean, Roll Tide. I just think they have a lot of fans. They can be a pretty feisty bunch. We've heard about some that have poisoned trees, some that have shot each other or shot Auburn fans. So, just based on anecdotal evidence, I think Alabama fans might be the my pick there.
I've got a top 4.
No, let me get this Alabama thing. Do you think in the state of Alabama, when you get like processed into a prison, they check like, are you in a gang? Like, you don't want to put the Crips and the Bloods together. Whatever. I don't particularly up on all of my prison gangs, who's feuding with you or who's got an allegiance, but you don't want to put two guys together that are going to kill each other, right? Do they ask in Alabama Roll Tide or War Eagle? Because if you put the two guys together,
right, you're risking a shanking right there.
It could get really bad. I mean, after like kick 6, are you kidding me?
Ooh.
You can't be having that. So is that part of the process? I would. And if you're an Auburn fan, you just shut up in there.
After the kick 6, you had to segregate the yard, right? You had to send them to their opposite sides. You could not have just intermingling between the Alabama and Auburn. Cons.
All right, Ross, what do you got?
All right, from a boy from down there, Dan.
I know.
From down there. I've got a top 5. I got a top 5 for you, Dan.
Okay, excellent.
On this, I'll start with 5. To the 5th most convicts, or we call them convicts.
Inmates. Inmates. They are convicted felons. They are. Yes. Inmates.
They're all innocent.
Or convicted misdemeanor.
My 5th ranked team is going to surprise you because it's Pat's number 1 is Alabama. I actually think they're 5 of my top 5. The 5th most inmates.
All their students are from New Jersey. They got to go back. They're not. Yeah, they all leave.
Yeah. It's true. Number 4 is underrated. All right, for their lawlessness, you might say, and that's the Hogs, baby, in Arkansas.
Really?
There's some Hogs in jail, boy. There are some Hogs in jail.
Memphis 3.
My wife is from
West
Arkansas.
Memphis 3.
Look, spent a lot of time in that state. Yeah. All right.
Really?
Number 3,
what are they doing in Arkansas? What crimes could you commit?
There's not a whole lot to do, so they create things to do. And a lot of the things are against the law. I'll just stop there, Dan. We don't need to go any further.
The Ozarks
I don't need to be, accosted by the Hog fans, and I'm already going to get enough of it, I'm sure. But number 3 is where I spent most of my life, the LSU fans, Dan, down in South Louisiana. These Bayou guys, there's no laws, so I don't know that they get arrested much because there's no laws at all. But there's that. Number 2 is Tennessee. I will say Tennessee is number 2.
Tennessee number 2
on my list. Now I got Tennessee. I got the orange at number 2. I do. The mountain people, Dan. And then number 1, guys, Florida man.
Yeah, Florida man.
Florida man. I mean, come on, Florida man, number 1. That's my top 5, Dan.
Is Florida man though all Gator fans? Are they all Gator fans? You're gonna peel off some for like Florida State.
There's some Knowles in
obviously
there.
Miami,
probably. Yeah.
Tennessee's got that.
Yes, Miami.
I mean, you got to have. Tennessee's got they had this prison, Brushy Mountain. It's very famous in the I listen to a lot of prison podcasts, and man, these guys talk about that. I think
Oh, do you?
it's not far from Knoxville. And like that place was just, I don't know if there were any guards. They just would stab each other. Now that place, you did not want to go to prison in Tennessee. Remember we discussed what state you'd want to go to prison if you had to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tennessee isn't it.
What did you land on there?
I went with Vermont. I feel like it's more like a bed and breakfast.
Yeah,
it's a little more.
Yeah,
it's more like a bed and breakfast. You get a nice view of the foliage.
Like pretty good one.
Your guards, your correction officers are like a couple from Manhattan. They want to get out of the corporate rat race. Moved up to like Mount
I was thinking
Pelier.
out west, Dan. I was thinking out west.
Pat chose Hawaii,
Montana. Or something.
I think I chose Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is a good one. Yeah. Although, wouldn't that be tough? I mean, you're locked up all day. You only get like an hour outside. That's that's like, it's too few time outside in such a beautiful, incredible place. That would be too tempting.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to do Tennessee.
Toys with you.
Florida man certainly is a contender here. It's it. All right. Well, I'll tell you. I'll read Nevin Shapiro's directly quote him properly. That's easy, no brainer. Took me a split second to answer. LSU.
Number 3 on my list. I love it. Yeah, he knows those Bayou people.
He was in Oakdale.
The problem is there are very few laws.
He says they're laden with
the Bayou Justice. I mean, you kill somebody and dump them in the swamp down there. Who knows? You don't even get arrested.
If you know the sheriff and they all know each other.
He said the correction off everybody was LSU. When they got beat against Alabama in 2012, we were eating lobster and shrimp the day before the game. The next day we got bagged lunches. I don't know. Could be. Now, he was in a federal prison. I think the state, they sent him to Angola. That place has got to be all Bengals, all Tigers, right?
Yeah,
they could do the spring game up there in that rodeo where they do the rodeo. Give the prisoners something.
Well, we advocate for that. SEC schools, move your spring game to the nearest federal or state prison.
Don't televise it. They say, well, I don't want anyone scouting. Well, how committed are you to stealing LSU's players? You're willing to get put into Angola. So you would Alabama said, right? It'd be like the mob sending a guy in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, few people know. I mean, I know the mafia is always linked to like the New Jersey area, obviously New York and all that stuff. But few people know about, I think, the Bayou mafia and mob in the New Orleans area and even south of New Orleans, literally on the Bayou. I mean, there's some stories down there for sure. And yeah, so that's good. I thought about putting them at number 2. I was going back and forth on Tennessee and LSU, but they're one and the same there probably.
All right. Well, Judge Shapiro has ruled. So I'm taking his. He was also in one in Alabama. I don't know. Anyway, that's our show. As typically bizarre and random and unorganized as the previous 699. So we thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you later.